What's up, guys? It's John with National Sports Entertainment, and I didn't die. I just been real busy, so I haven't really been posting too much. And honestly, I don't really go into baseball just because I feel like of all the sports, football and basketball are the ones that really emulate the WWE. And obviously, I use wrestling logic for my picks, and of course, we fade the public too. Which just means wherever the public's at, we're going to pick the opposite because we know Vegas isn't going to pay them out. So, anyway, I will be back. I'll try at least to get back in the Discord. I know a bunch of people are in there and haven't been in there in a bit. Same thing with the Patreon. I basically post every day still there. I've been about the last week, it's been a little in and off, so I'll get back doing that again. As I said, just been pretty busy. But anyway, we couldn't miss opening game here. So, last year we were pretty darn close, obviously. Actually, our preseason pick was Niners from the beginning of the year. I have like a whole playlist on that. And then obviously, it was like week 5 is when we called the Chiefs Niners just because of the whole Mahomes versus the world narrative. And this year is not much different. I'm actually going to go into my Super Bowl pick right now. It involves one of these two teams, and it's not a shocker. It's going to be the Chiefs, in my opinion. And I'll go into that in a minute. But let's go into the game. I'm not going to lie, this game is not an easy one, rigged or not rigged, just because both of these teams obviously get pushed pretty hard. And they do a lot of 50-50s. I think we're going to get 50-50 booking. And what 50-50 booking is one team gets a win and then the other team gets it back. So, since the Chiefs did just knock the Ravens out of the playoffs, it kind of reminds me of when Brady beat Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Then the next year, Mahomes just thrashed him on Monday Night Football. They do it all the time. So, I actually think that's what we're going to get here. I think we're going to get a Ravens win. It also sets up another narrative. If you remember last year, the Chiefs lost to the Lions in the opener. So they can start running some narrative about how the Chiefs don't do well on Thursday openers or just in general get off the slow starts. And I think that's exactly what they want. That's what they did last year. They got them off on this like a slow start. They limped into the playoffs. Very akin to the Warriors when they beat the Celtics. You know, they barely got in the playoffs. Nobody believed in them, quote, even though a lot of people did. And then they wind up winning the whole thing. So I like the Ravens in this matchup. I'm also going to start, I did it last year, and I do it on the Patreon, but I'm going to share my system because I don't just pick straight up games. Obviously, if you're tailing and you're tailing for the purpose of sprinkling some money on these games, I do a 1, 2, 4 unit Martingale, which has been very, very profitable, especially with football. And there's a lot of things that go into account. The spreads are a big deal. If you look at the history of the spreads, if you look at teams' record against the spreads, that could all help. A lot of people pick teams that are good against the spread and they fade teams that suck against the spread, and it should be the opposite. Because if you look at the spreads over history, they always even out. Meaning, teams are always going to fall between 40 and 60% against the spread. You're not going to see a team at 20-something% against the spread. And that'll start helping us out in like week 4, week 5, because there's going to be teams that are undefeated or winless against the spread, and we can go ahead and take them. So anyway, for this one, the biggest reasons I like the Ravens, again, one, I think it's like a payback. You know, the Chiefs beat them and knocked them out of the playoffs. I just think it stands to reason that the Ravens get a win here. I think they want to get the Chiefs off on a slow start. Also, I think they're going to do something with Kelsey and Taylor Swift. I brought this up last year. I thought that they were going to do something where there was like, you know, just some trouble in paradise, love on the rocks, that maybe has some issues with these two, and it might become a talking point whether the team can focus with Taylor Swift. I could be wrong. I just have a feeling with the soap opera that the NFL is, that's what we're going to get. As far as the game itself, I lean towards the under here. I just have a feeling more people are going to be inclined to take the over for a plethora of reasons, but really because it's two pretty, while they have good defenses, it's two pretty high octane offenses here. Obviously, the Ravens just added Derrick Henry, so I like the under because I have a feeling they'll be doing a lot of running with the Ravens, which is obviously going to eat up some clock. And I think we're going to see some mishaps, a couple mistakes, if you will, from the Chiefs. Maybe some turnovers and stuff like that, which also usually will help the under, depending on, of course, where the turnover is. But I wanted to go into basically what I think is going to happen this year for the Chiefs. And even though I don't have them winning this game, I 100% have them winning the Super Bowl. And I was thinking maybe we got a Chiefs-Niners rematch. Last year I had gone into that during the Super Bowl. Right after the Chiefs won, I went into, I think there's a really good chance we get a rematch. For again, that was also for a plethora of reasons. But the more I think about it, I think it kind of diminishes Mahomes' inevitable three-peat because he's beat the same team twice, if that's the case. And actually, he'll have beaten them 3 times, huh? So he'll have 3 wins against the same team, which doesn't really help his repertoire, I think. And I'll post the video because I think it's the most informative one, where I went into last year, like exactly what, I mean, we got it down to the division winners, everything last year, week 5. I'll post that because there was a team that I went into that I said was going to make the NFC Championship, and sure enough, they did. And at the time, nobody thought they were going to do anything. Now people will say, oh yeah, but at the time, not many people had much faith in the Lions. And it was just very obvious to me. And this is where Vegas will give themselves away. So if you remember 2 years ago, the Vikings won that division handedly. They were like 13-4 or something. And then I noticed the next year, the Vegas Lions, despite the Vikings really not losing anybody, and the Lions really not bringing any huge names in, the Lions had become a favorite to win the division. They were at like minus 120. The second I saw that, I knew that they were going to go pretty far. And then my opinion was definitely reinforced when they came out with their script commercial. They were joking around about the quote script in this commercial. If you guys haven't seen it, I'm sure most people that watch the channel have. But they joked about the Chiefs going back to the Super Bowl. They had Mama Kelsey on there. They even joked about making Mahomes not the main star for the Chiefs, which obviously he wasn't. It was Taylor Swift. And then they also joked about how the Lions were going to go to the NFC Championship. So, like, again, just a couple of years ago, the NFL wasn't even entertaining these kind of ideas. All they were doing was ignoring it. But then it got so powerful, and so many people on Twitter and so many people in general came out saying it's scripted. You got all these damage control goons like Pat McAfee and all these different, Adam Schefter, all coming out making jokes, Gene Steratore, all coming out, joking around about how ridiculous it is to believe it could be scripted. And Chiefs' own Larry Johnson's come out multiple times only to be called crazy when he said it's 100% scripted. So the Lions thing just was a dead giveaway last year. And then I don't know if you guys remember the color theory they tried messing with. The color of the logo for the longest time. They were saying, oh, if it's rigged, it's going to be Ravens-Niners because those are the colors of the teams, and the Super Bowl colors were purple and red or something. And then, like 2 years prior, the colors of the logo matched up with the winner. So I don't go too far into that. Again, was not much of a proponent of the color theory because I thought they were doing that just to mess with people. My point being, with scripts now about commercials, or if you just Google NFL scripted and all the top sports media pages are all trying to explain why it's not scripted and why people are crazy for calling it scripted. it's almost like they're going through like the 5 stages, right? They're going from like straight up denial, and now they're almost trying to bargain. They're trying to get people to see why it can't be scripted. But to me, it just makes sense that again, Ravens get a win here. Really not sure about an exact score. I just do like an under, maybe something like a 23-20, something along those lines where you get some points, but nothing crazy. And I just think even at 47.5 is kind of high. I also think with these two teams, it's opening day. I feel like a lot of people are going to be slamming the over, and of course Vegas is not going to pay that out. So I think the play here is the Ravens on the money line, and just an idea of how my system works. Essentially, we will take anyone tailing the Ravens on the money line. So it'll be for 1 unit. So if your unit amount is $10, you're putting 10 to win 13. If your unit amount's $100, you're putting down 100 to win 130. If they don't win, then our next game is going to be for 2 units. And then if our second game's also a loss, which I don't think will happen, but just say we lose the Friday game too, then we'll probably pick just the most, in my opinion, the biggest lock for Sunday. Play that for 4 units. So the way that works is all we need to do is hit 1 out of 3. So basically a 33% hit rate. And we will profit at the least 1 unit on each one of our sequences. So it's worked the last 2 years on this channel. Obviously the first channel I had got Thanos snapped because people were freaking hitting too much, and a lot of the channels that talk about this kind of stuff get Thanos snapped. So hopefully it doesn't happen this time around. We had to restart the whole thing. But anyway, I just, it's a system that's been working for me for years. And it's because it's a disciplined system. A lot of mistakes people make with the Martingale is they perpetually chase, so 1 unit, 2 units, 4 units, 8 units, 16 units. That will bankrupt you, and there's no value there. So I cut it off after 3. If we lose 3 in a row, I cut it off, move on. But I'll go more into the system, obviously, as we get rolling. This is more just about kind of a season preview, as well as the Thursday night game, which is tonight, technically. So, yeah, nothing too crazy. I think the Ravens get the win. As far as the Chiefs go, I brought up Rashee Rice last year, too. And this is when he was like a 4th receiver. It was just so obvious. He's a possession guy, 1st-round pick out of SMU. And to me, it was just pretty obvious he was going to develop into a top receiver for the Chiefs. I think he still has a strong year. And for the Ravens side, I think they're going to mix it up a lot. I really think, obviously Lamar had a really good year last year. I think it's going to be more of the same. I think we're going to see a reinvigorated Derrick Henry. And I think the Ravens are going to come off as complete powerhouses. And the reason that I think they have to do this is, again, the Chiefs, they in my opinion, they're already starting the GOAT conversation with Mahomes and Brady, which is, if you think about it, kind of laughable, because when Brady had 3 rings, they were not calling him a GOAT. They were not saying, oh, he's as good as Joe Montana. They weren't doing it yet. They were still talking about if he was better than Peyton. And the reason being, he only had half the rings. I think Montana has 5, actually. He had 3. But in this case, Brady's got more than twice the rings Mahomes does. And they're talking about how Mahomes is better. He's a GOAT. And I think they're setting that up because there's one thing Brady has never done, and that's a three-peat. I genuinely think that they want Mahomes to be the first since Michael Jordan to do a three-peat. Well, I guess Kobe did it, didn't he? But just in general, when you think of three-peats, people think of the Bulls, obviously. They think of Michael Jordan. So I genuinely believe that we're going to get a Mahomes three-peat. I don't have a doubt in my mind on that. I think they made that up a long time ago. And you need powerhouses. You need teams that people actually believe can beat a team that's won 2 Super Bowls in a row, which isn't easy. So the Ravens are definitely one of those teams, especially when you stack them with Derrick Henry. So the Ravens winning this match makes much more sense to me. The Chiefs winning, again, it can happen. They don't lose often at home in Arrowhead, but I just think we're going to get a Ravens win here. And who knows, maybe they beat them down, you know? When the Chiefs lost to the Lions last year, it was a 1-point game. It's 21-20. So maybe this time they mix it up and it's a bludgeoning. I really don't know too much how they're going to go with that. I think they want to make it entertaining. But yeah, like I said, something like Ravens, I think like 23-20 makes sense. But like a shutout, like not shutout, but you know, like a two-score win, something like that, really wouldn't surprise me at all. So I kind of look at the headlines. You can see, can the Ravens avenge? We got where this jabroni is talking about the over/under, and Stephen A over here. I think this will be a good take for Stephen A because I do think that we're going to see again Derrick Henry look better than he has in years. So yeah, there's a few teams from the AFC that can hang with the Chiefs. One's the Ravens, and one's really obvious. The Jets. This is going to be a year that the Jets get pushed. I think they wanted to do it last year, and I don't know what happened. Another reason people think it's scripted. If you watch back and you watch that Aaron Rodgers quote injury, that man fell down. Then he like stood up. He looked to the sideline, and like just looked like he took a signal. Like he looked to the sideline, and then he just sat down, and it was just a really weird looking quote injury. And I do remember a lot of people saying the clock was interesting because I believe it was 11:09 or something on the clock when he got hurt. And again, this is 9/11 when it happened. And what is he? He's the Jets captain, right? What's another word for captain? Pilot. So, and obviously a Jet, right? So there's a lot of interesting things that I noticed with the Aaron Rodgers injury, as did a lot of other people. But this, in my opinion, is going to be their year. They've been basically setting it up all off season with Pat McAfee, who, by the way, calls SmackDown and Raw, WWE. He transitioned perfectly from football to wrestling because, in my opinion, it's all the same. But they've been setting up Rodgers for a while, in my opinion, like basically since he got hurt last year for this year. And you got a gritty defense. They got rid of some guys that really weren't performing that much. And I do think that out of the AFC East, it's going to be the Jets this year. The Bills obviously trading some guys is not an accident, in my opinion. I think that is because the Bills have basically owned the division for a while now, and they're going to change things up. And the jury's still out on Tua for me. I'm not sure what they're going to do with the Dolphins. I think they'll keep them competitive, like wild card. But I think the Jets are going to be one of like the powerhouses. So when I look at like powerhouses, it's just the fresh teams. You know, Ravens have been there. I'd say Bengals because they have competed with the Chiefs before and beaten them. Chargers because of the whole Harbaugh thing, and the Jets. So like those are like the four teams. There's a few more probably, but those four are the ones that I see where the public by the end of the year might look at them and say, oh wow, they can actually win the Super Bowl. And because they got to do something to get people off the Chiefs. They're not going to pay that out if everyone's on the Chiefs for a three-peat. So that's just kind of how I'm looking at it. On the NFC side, just like last year, I have like way less room for compromise. Like last year, I just maintained all year it was going to be the Niners, and I just never changed my mind because it seemed that obvious to me. This year for the NFC, you know, I don't think they're going to do it, but I do think they want to get the Bears looking strong, and Mahomes versus Caleb would obviously be a big draw. And it would be something that wouldn't completely shock me. But I don't think that's going to happen. I do think for the NFC side, it's going to be the Lions. There's a couple reasons. Obviously, people were talking about Eminem versus Taylor Swift. That'd be pretty funny. But for more reasons than that, the Lions, they just seem like one of those teams that they have knocking on the door. And this is the year for them to kind of pound it down. Also looking at the Vegas lines, they have such better odds than a lot of the other teams in the NFC. And by better, I mean shorter odds, like they're bigger favorites. Vegas likes the Lions a lot. And I just don't think it'll be the Niners. I think it'll be too boring. And again, it'll be 3 times now, which I guess they could say, oh man, he beat the same team 3 times. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that, again, they're going to expand Mahomes' little record book that he has going. And by doing that, you beat another team in the Super Bowl. Now he's beating the Lions, he's beating the Niners, etc. So that's just what I think is going to happen. And as far as tonight's game, like I said, I just feel like we're going to definitely get a Ravens win. Mostly because they want to make the Chiefs look not like a complete juggernaut. Otherwise, again, people are just going to be all over them. Don't forget, this is when a lot of people start placing future bets. So if the Chiefs come out and just smack the Ravens, a lot of future bets are going to go on the Chiefs. And since I think they're winning the Super Bowl, of course, I don't think Vegas is going to pay that out. As far as props, like, I usually don't do props because that's another thing. They even mess with props, and it's not a coincidence. They will have, like, in a lot of situations, like, let's just say Derrick Henry, for example. A lot of people might pick Henry to get like 100 yards and a touchdown because it seems pretty doable. And then what they'll do is like they'll give him like 160 yards, but like the backup will get like 2 touchdowns, or Lamar will get a touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and Derrick Henry won't, and stuff like that. So I try and stay away from props. I will say I'm expecting a not a down game from Mahomes, but I would take the under on most of his stuff. I don't think he's going to be throwing 3 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to be doing anything crazy. Again, I think they really want to try and build this narrative that, the Chiefs aren't that strong. They're just a cohesive team, and they've won Super Bowls because they're well coached and they got Mahomes and things of that nature. But I don't think they're going to come out and just squash the Ravens or even like do well offensively. I think it's going to be kind of a struggle. And of course, they'll attribute that to it's the beginning of the year. Teams are finding their rhythm. And from the Ravens, it'll be interesting because I am curious to see what kind of offense they come out with. Again, real or fake, just like wrestling. They do have specific gimmicks, if you will, for a reason. So I'm curious if they're going to have like them doing a lot of option type deals with Henry and Jackson, and they just make them look unstoppable. But we'll see that as the season goes on. That's the good thing. As the season goes on, also listening to the narrators, again, the announcers, it's like watching wrestling. Whenever something happens, they'll explain exactly why it happened, how it happened, and then they'll almost foreshadow what to expect as the game goes on. So it's definitely going to be an entertaining game. Definitely no doubt about that. But yeah, I think, and especially looking at the public too, more of the public's on the Chiefs this game. Again, they're at home, reigning Super Bowl champs. And I wouldn't go by like Vegas Insider. A lot of those websites, I don't think they give out accurate handles. They'll tell you they'll say 82% on one team. And I think they do it on purpose because there's no way that any one website could know the actual Vegas handle. Like, the only ones that would know the Vegas handle would be, like, MGM. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, there's too many books out there. There's too many different people placing bets on different platforms for any website. So I would be careful if you're using Vegas Insider to try and see where the public's at. I do think it's purposely wrong. So, yeah, I just kind of go with my gut. And my gut's definitely telling me way more of the public's going to be on the Chiefs here at home, which makes sense for a Ravens win. And again, there's always like that one team. They actually did it with Baltimore last year. They had a really strong start. But there's always that team that just gets off to a really good start, looks unstoppable. Last year was really the Niners. And that's probably why they lost in the Super Bowl, because all year long they were just the obvious team, the quote obvious team. I did stick with them to get to the Super Bowl simply because of the whole story. Brock Purdy, last person in the draft, versus Mahomes, the new GOAT. It just made sense to me. And their team was so stacked that, and again, I'll post the video, but basically I saw it as like Mahomes versus the world. It was like you had Mahomes and Kelsey and a couple other guys on the Chiefs versus just this super stacked roster on the NFC side, which was the Niners with so many superstars. So that's why it made more sense. It's like, okay, if you really want to put Mahomes over, you have him beat the Niners, who just they bludgeoned like everybody last year. They had a couple bad games. But yeah, I'll be going more into the futures. I'll be doing division picks. There's a couple that I think are less obvious. I think some are more obvious. But I wanted to at least cover the game. So I'm just going to be putting a unit on this game, nothing crazy. Like I said, if we don't get it, that's fine. For the Friday game, we'll do 2 units. And then if we need to, 4 units on a Sunday game. But I don't think it'll come to that. And yeah, I think the Ravens get this straight up. I wouldn't bother. I do take points, but I don't feel like getting juiced here. So I like the plus 130 here. And yeah, I'll be going into basically each division, who I think is going to win each division, why, different storylines. Basically our like Final Fours, who's going to make the runs, like who we're going to be seeing deep in the playoffs. Players that I think might while I'm on the subject, players that might come out of nowhere. A guy I think that might come out of nowhere. I said this when they drafted Will Levis ahead of him, Hendon Hooker. Which again ties in perfectly with my Lions theory. I think the guy's a draw. I think he's fun to watch. And again, he's got the Peyton Manning connection, with Tennessee. I just have a feeling that at some point he's going to get inserted into the lineup, and a Hendon Hooker-led Lions team I think is going to look really good. So that's just one thing I think happens. We'll see if, how accurate that is. But I said that last year. I said, I really think Hendon Hooker at some point is going to be their guy. I feel like in a real league, this guy would have been drafted way higher. He's not perfect, of course, but I think he's a lot better than Will Levis. So anyway, yeah, I like Ravens here in the under. I'm not loving the under. I'm not playing the under. I'll tell you that. Like, I'm not playing the over under, but I would pick the under if I had to. You know what I'm saying? So you could also see it moved from 47, or it opened at 46 and moved to 47.5. I can't tell you how many times stuff like this happens, and the total will be 47, which is obviously just a clip where they like to clip the public. They'll start it, and they do it both ways. And I can't tell you how many times that happens, where when they move it like a point, it winds up finishing right in between. So a bunch of people get clipped. But yeah, like I said, I like the under. I'm not going to run out of my way to play it because I wouldn't be shocked if the game went over. But I do think the under makes a lot more sense here. So yeah, my 2 recommendations are the under, and obviously the Chiefs to win. The Ravens to win outright. And the one that I'm actually playing myself is the Ravens to win outright. Again, just because I think it'll be an interesting narrative. Again, this is be a couple years in a row. Right after winning the Super Bowl, the Chiefs lose. And I think that'll be a talking point. And they're going to run the same talking point, I think. Oh, can the Chiefs do it again? Or are they strong enough? They don't look like the same team. And then if you insert Taylor Swift into the story, which I think they're definitely going to, like they did last year, I don't see why they wouldn't push her and Kelsey maybe having some problems. And the Taylor Swift curse, I think she's going to, something might happen. She might write a little diss song about him, something that she's not too unfamiliar with. And then we might see, again, the team kind of struggle, and then they'll be talking all about that. Again, to me, this is wrestling. It really is. So I think they're just going to do anything they can to make it as entertaining as possible, where people want to watch every week. So yeah, that's basically it. Ravens, I think they're going to win. Hopefully we get off to a good start with a nice 1-0 start this year. And I'll be going into, like I said, all the other games. But this will be a good gauge, I feel like, on what to expect. I'm going to be watching the referees. Everybody blames the referees. It's not the referees. If you watch the players, especially since you have 2 scrambling quarterbacks, one of the biggest giveaways is defensive breakdowns. And it happens so often. For example, a guy will have Mahomes dead to rights, and instead of just taking an angle like a fifth grader is taught how to how angles work, like he'll get behind him and start chasing him from behind, or they'll just like put one arm out and kind of let him escape, and then he gets like a 15-yard run, and it happens all the time. It's probably one of the most obvious, in my opinion, giveaways as far as players just selling on defense. So I'll be looking out for that because each year it gets worse and worse as far as players just like wrestling, allowing the other team to do things. So I'll be watching that just to see what happens. And yeah, the referees are the ones who always get blamed because, again, if you blame the referees, then people can't say it's rigged. They can just say, oh, well, this referee wanted to get paid. But if it's the players themselves, which is what I believe, or coaches calling plays that don't make sense, whatever, as we saw with Dan Campbell last year, then it's a lot more different in my opinion. Then people can start saying, okay, this doesn't make sense. Why is this player doing this? Why is this coach doing this? And the NFL doesn't want that. They want it all on the referees. They want people thinking the referees are just out there by themselves. And for people that might be new to the channel that don't think it's scripted, like, these referees are pawns. They're not high status people. So if you think that a referee can come out and just go rogue, and guys like Jerry Jones and the owners of these different teams aren't going to immediately have those referees fired, it just doesn't make sense. A referee just can't go rogue. If a referee is doing something, it's because the owners know about it, they're okay with it. It's because the commissioner, the NFL, they're okay with it. So that's the biggest thing I've heard about, like, the referees. People saying, like, oh yeah, the referees need to be replaced and they screw up games. They wouldn't be able to do it. They would not be allowed to do it. If it was a fair league, the NFL would just fire any referee that was going rogue. So I genuinely don't buy that the referees are the problem. Actually, if you guys remember Tim Donahue from the NBA, I reached out to him, and he'll be on the channel pretty soon. We'll be doing a interview, and he said all questions, no questions are off limits. So I'm going to go into him because he came out and explained how the NBA told him what to do, who to call fouls for, all these different things. And then of course everybody just said, "Oh yeah, Tim Donahue went rogue, and he's the only one doing it. He's the only referee that did it. Good thing we caught him." So he basically got scapegoated, and I just don't believe it. I've heard a lot of his accounts. I've watched some of his documentaries. I've watched other people that have talked about him or with him, and what he's saying makes way more sense, in my opinion, than what the NBA was saying and what other people are saying. So I can't wait to have him on. And yeah, I think he said nothing's off limits, so I'm definitely going to be asking him all about how it works with the officials. That's for the NBA, of course, but I am going to be doing that still. I was going to do it last year, actually, during the finals, but he had something come up, so just figured I would do it this year. Maybe when basketball season starts, we'll go into it. But yeah, I'll keep you guys updated. I'll be having Tim on, and we'll talk to him, just because I think it will offer a lot of insight. So yeah, look out for Pat McAfee. He did step away from wrestling because he's a good puppet, in my opinion. And football, basically, the NFL said, ESPN, whoever, we need you to give your undivided attention to us. You can't be focused on wrestling. And maybe they know it's a bad look when they see the same guy calling football games, telling us it's not scripted, and then the next night he's on SmackDown, watching guys hit each other with chairs. And that's another thing with McAfee, not to ramble, but I know a lot of people are new because I haven't posted in months, so obviously there's going to be new people. And every day more people believe it's scripted, so we have new people for that reason. But McAfee did a complete 180. This was like 2 years ago. He came out and said it was scripted. Because what happened was he apparently, I don't know if you guys remember, like on his channel, he does like a parlay where he's like, okay, here's our parlay that we came up with, and everybody pick this parlay and we're all going to get rich. And it was a player prop parlay. And in this player prop parlay, He apparently hit every part of it, except he had Tom Brady to get 2 rushing yards, okay? Now, what happened was Tom Brady had, I think, 3 rushing yards. And this has come from Pat McAfee, but it's what he said happened. He had 3 rushing yards, and then at the end of the game, he took a kneel. And of course, that knocked him back to like 1 rushing yard. So McAfee lost his parlay. And he was irate about this. He was ranting and raving about how it must be rigged. There's no way he had it till the very end. And then they do this kneel, and he lost his parlay as a result. And to me, at the time, it kind of was fishy because if your team is winning, like, so you're McAfee, you've played in the NFL for 11 years, right? And your team's winning. In this case, it was the Bucks, and you have Brady getting 3 rushing yards. I would immediately be kissing my parlay goodbye because it's the end of the game. The other team didn't have any timeouts. Of course, Tom Brady's going to kneel the ball. Like, what do you expect him to do? Throw a Hail Mary? Like, they always come out in victory formation. But McAfee, like, explained the story like it was a shock to him. He's like, yeah, I thought I had it. And then out of nowhere, Tom Brady comes out and kneels the ball. And I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. And it's like, dude, you should have seen this coming the second the Bucks got the ball. Like, of course he was going to kneel it. So it made no sense. And then, of course, like 2 weeks later, this man completely 180, like he had never mentioned it being rigged. I think he even deleted the video where he talks about it. Because, like, 2 weeks later, he's mocking everybody that's saying it's scripted. And he's bringing on all these people, quote, experts to explain why it's not scripted. So the NFL definitely had a talking to with him, in my opinion. I think he's nothing more than damage control. And I do like to follow the saga of Pat McAfee because he does, in my opinion, give away a lot. He's the one who said a couple years ago, now everybody thinks it's scripted for a new Mahomes dynasty. And look what we're getting. So, yeah, I think Mahomes gets the three-peat. 3-point game fitting. I think he loses today. Like I said, got to give the Ravens a nice, strong start. Get a couple teams established that can be believable to beat the Chiefs. Chargers, Ravens, Jets are kind of the ones that come to mind for me. And I also think that they want the Chiefs to kind of... They just remind me of the Warriors. They really do. Where it's like every year they try and seed some doubt with them and try and get the public or people to believe, oh yeah, they're actually an underdog when they're really not. If you remember the playoffs last year, the Chiefs were, quote, underdogs in every game, even though I don't think many people thought they were going to lose. So they like to do that. And that's why I think Vegas is involved. The lines, they're nothing more than psychological, in my opinion. They put the lines out just to kind of throw people off. But in this case, the line does look normal, I'll be honest. I think this is about what the line would be. Chiefs at home against the Ravens, obviously. Playoff matchup. Rematch, so... And being at home, obviously, the Chiefs would be getting the points, or I'm saying laying the points. So, nothing too suspicious about the line here. Obviously, if it was more suspicious, I might have a different opinion. But yeah, I just think Ravens are going to get this. And then I'll be going, like I said, into Friday and the rest of the games. And I'll do like a complete in-depth breakdown on the playoffs, exactly who I think is going to, like all teams that I think are going to make the playoffs. And even, I'll even do like a playoff simulator. That's what I did last year, and it was actually pretty accurate. Just who I think is going to get in and how far I think each team's going to get. So yeah, I appreciate you guys. I know I've been gone for a while. Like I said, I've been quite busy. But I do plan on getting our NFL picks out every week as I always do. And I always appreciate you guys. So yeah, I'll be in the Discord. I'm not as much just because I've been really busy, but I've been out of there for a while, so I can only imagine what's going on in there. But we have a good group of people in there that bring up a lot of interesting things that a lot of times I won't notice, and they'll bring stuff up that I'm like, damn, I can't believe I missed that, And so I want to get back in there and also just kind of get some alpha out for people. So I'll attach the Discord here, as well as, like I said, my video from last year, just basically where it was kind of like this, where I just went into the Super Bowl and why I thought it was going to happen the way it did. And again, this is like back in week 5, and we were able to predict most of the playoff matchups just because, again, I think if you watch wrestling your whole life, then when you see this kind of stuff, in my opinion, it just seems kind of obvious. So, of course, I could always be wrong, but yeah, I'm really liking this one. I'm liking the Ravens here. Anytime we get plus odds, that's nice, and I think it'll set the tone for maybe the Chiefs get off to, maybe they start off 0-2 this year. That's never happened. Mahomes has never lost 2 games in a row, I believe, or at home or something like that. So that would be a really interesting narrative to immediately get people thinking, doubting the Chiefs. So take care and happy earnings.